All right, in this video, we're going to be looking at really the second part of Chapter 3 on planning nutritious diets. And one of the tools that you have, and there's many different websites and applications and different things that can be used for this, but one of the ones that is recommended here, and this is a very good resource, is called MyPlate or myplate.gov. There's a lot of information here and a lot of different resources. So when you get a chance, go to myplate.gov. They have an app that you can download. It's very easy to use, very useful to use. There's a lot of different resources here that's all based on the dietary guidelines for Americans. Currently, it's 2020 through 2025. That should be updating soon. But there's a lot of good information here. When you get a chance, just kind of go through this website a little bit. It allows you to do like a nutrition calculator. I know through the McGraw-Hill, we're using a nutrition calc type program to do some exercises with. And so it has one similar to that. It does some similar type things. It has some interactive quizzes you can take just to kind of learn more about nutrition. There are recipes there. If you're in a particular budget, it has budget-friendly food ideas, which is very helpful. It has different recipes. You know, if you're trying to find recipes geared toward losing weight or building strength or a particular population group. Maybe you're a senior adult and you're trying to find recipes geared towards a senior adult type of a diet or a adolescent type of a diet. You know, there's different types of recipe genres out there. Like I said, it's a lot of things. You can download an app for it to kind of keep up with things that way as well. But one of the things that is kind of one of their big ticket items here is this MyPlate diagram, which goes over those 5 food groups that we talked about earlier. And you can kind of see them listed here: fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and then of course dairy. This is, a change from, and you may remember when they had the food pyramid, and that kind of changed over the years anyway. But the USDA had established kind of like a food pyramid that tried to build up, which food groups are, we should be eating from and that sort of thing. And so this is a variation of that. But again, it's been built upon, improved over the years based on different scientific studies and things. One of the big differences from that original food pyramid, if you remember, it was based on a high carbohydrate type of a diet. It's based on bread, cereal, rice, and pasta. That was the base of that pyramid. And then you had, of course, vegetables and fruits, meats, dairy, and then they had very, very little fats. And then research has kind of turned around a little bit and said, we really need to be watching the carbohydrate group, being careful not to have too many of the carbohydrate groups. And, it's okay and actually helpful to have healthy fats. Now, not all fats are the same, and we'll see that in later chapters. You need to be careful about things like saturated fats and trans fats, and we'll define those a little bit later. But not all fats are unhealthy, and so this is the kind of more improved version of that food pyramid, I guess. The other thing that you can kind of see is you can find different types of dietary patterns you can look at, and like I said, maybe your goal is to lose weight or maybe maintain your weight, and so you can create a diet pattern based on certain amount of calories per day. And of course, watching those foods and beverages with those empty calories, or those that are high in the added sugars and things. And so definitely take a look at that MyPlate. One of the questions that was in the chapter, and I think it's worth our time kind of looking at, and one of the figures there was, do Americans follow dietary recommendations? And we all have our different opinions, but probably the consensus is no, not really. And it's based on a lot of different things. It's based on lifestyle. It's based on our current habits. It could be based on our, financial restrictions. It could, our busy lifestyles, different things. And so there's different reasonings behind that. But in general, and there's been studies done to try to track people's diets and look at things. But in general, some of the categories that are kind of under those MyPlate recommendations, these are percentages, would be vegetables, dairy, and fruit. We don't seem to be getting enough fruits, vegetables, and the kind of healthy dairy will be low fat or fat-free type dairy products. And what they also found was that, and I don't think it's much surprising, is that the typical American diet, not everyone, but the typical American diet seems to be getting too much of the sugar categories, the carbohydrate categories, more of the unhealthy type of fats like solid fats, saturated fats. Those are fats at solid at room temperature type fats, and sodium or salt. And so those are just kind of some things to consider there. Another resource that we have to try to help us plan out a healthy diet and nutritious diet is looking at what's called the Nutrition Facts Panel. And I know everybody's seen this. I don't know how much we use these, but it's definitely worth taking some time to look at that information and trying to understand what that information is all about. And I know for this course we'll be doing some practice exercises and some things to kind of look at what type of information is there, what does it mean, especially as we go through the different macronutrients like the carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. We'll kind of identify those on that nutrient label and try to kind of look to see what it's really telling us, because that's some very useful information that we have at our fingertips, but we have to be able to use that, right? And so that label is going to have information about the energy in that food, the calories that are there is what this is saying, the nutrient contents, does it contain, how much carbohydrates, fats, what type of fats are there, how much protein is there, does it have vitamins, does it have particular minerals, does it have added sugars? That information is really what we're trying to get from how much is in a particular serving size, how much, how many servings are in that particular package. That's very important information also. And so all of this is very important if we are truly trying to be concerned and try to adjust our eating habits. Now this is FDA regulated, which is a good thing. It's going to have a particular format. It's going to be consistent, and so that means it doesn't matter if you're looking at a package of potato chips or a package of whole wheat crackers or bread or something like that. It's going to have a particular format that's going to make it a little easier, as you're going down the grocery aisle, kind of looking at that information. So I know, like I said, everybody's seen something like this, but let me just kind of go through. This is an example from your textbook. Looks like a can of tomatoes here. We'll kind of look at what information is there. And then we're going to revisit this as we go through, again, those nutrient chapters, and really kind of look into especially those macronutrient categories. But this is pretty standard type of a label. One of the things up here you see kind of right at the beginning is how many servings are listed for a particular food item. This and again, this is a can of looks like diced tomatoes, and so this particular can has enough for 3.5 servings. Now they have identified the serving size as a 1/2 cup. They also try to give that to you in metric if that's 126 grams. So a 1/2 cup is a serving size, and then the calories here is in bold, and so that's important information. That's the caloric energy value there, 25 calories. But notice the 25 calories is per serving. So if you eat a 1/2 cup of these tomatoes, that's 25 calories, right? So, you know, if you eat the entire can of tomatoes, you would have to, you know, do a little calculation to figure out how many calories there are, because it's 25 calories per serving. Well, there's 3.5 servings in one container. So you would have to multiply those two numbers. It doesn't give that out for you here, but you would have to multiply 25 calories times 3.5 servings, and that's like 87.5 or so, 87.5 calories if you consume the entire can. So just kind of be aware of that, that this calorie number is only works for, you know, is the number of calories per serving, and that serving size is a half a cup. Then down below, you'll see, usually listed out first is the fat category, and again, we'll look at what each of these are, you know, a little bit more. You got total fat, saturated fat, trans fat. We'll define these, the cholesterol. We'll define these a little bit more in later chapters. It lists the sodium there. And then you've got a carbohydrate category here, and you got total carbohydrates, fibers, sugars that are listed there. And then you got a category for protein. Down below, you have a category for the micronutrients that may be present or not. And so this, so the FDA does regulate this. In other words, the FDA says that, you know, they have to report the calories, they have to report the serving size, fats, carbs, and proteins. A little bit less regulation here. Some of these are optional, and so you're not always going to see these same 4 micronutrients listed. It may or may not show vitamin D or calcium or iron, potassium, but it may include other ones that it shows there. And the other thing to kind of note here is on the right column, you have percent daily value that is listed here. We'll talk about that also. Down below, they'll have a list of ingredients. They have to list the manufacturer's name. So some of these things, like I said, are pretty consistent from label to label. That daily value, your kind of book definition there, you've got some nutrient intake standards that's developed here, and you'll see those here on this right-hand side. It's the percentage of those nutrients that's in this food that's recommended, you know, on a daily basis. And so if it doesn't have any fat at all, so you're not meeting those recommendations, so you have 0%. Notice it had this and again, these are by serving sizes. So in other words, one serving, half a cup, would have 50 milligrams of sodium. If you ate the entire can, you would have to do some multiplication there to figure out how much sodium is in the entire package, right? And so at least one serving size has 50 milligrams of sodium, and then you can look at the daily value and say, well, that's 2% of the recommended amount that I should be getting on a daily basis. Dietary fiber, it lists here 2 grams. That's 8% of what I should be getting on a daily basis. You may think, well, you know, is that the same thing as an RDA? We kind of mentioned the RDAs earlier in the chapter, recommended dietary allowances. RDAs are a little stricter, I guess, as far as their information. It comes from a different institute. It's called the Institute of Medicine. So they're not 100% the same. So generally the daily values, those percent daily values, they're generally used. It's a little broader, I guess, type of a value there. It seems to apply to more people than the RDAs would, and so that's what you're going to see there on the nutrient facts panel. All right, another type of labeling that you'll find, and you've probably seen before on food packaging, is health claims. If you let me show you the example, and then we'll kind of come back and look at some of these notes here. But you know, this is a package of yogurt, and this is an example of a health claim. It says here that it helps naturally regulate your digestive system by, you know, eating this product. It has some beneficial effects for our GI tract, our digestive system. On the right, we see a can of black beans and the big heart logo here. says it may reduce your risk of heart disease. So these are health claims. Now let's go back. Health claims are regulated by the FDA, and so there are certain guidelines that they need to follow. It does indicate that there are some potential health benefits for that product. They should be complete, usually very, kind of short or concise, easy to understand. Of course, they need to be honest. They should refer to a product that contains 10% or more of the daily value of those nutrients before fortification. Remember, fortification is when they artificially add a nutrient to a food item. And so this is trying to get us to look at health claims based on the natural product rather than just the product after it's been, changed by adding extra nutrients to that product. It should be for a product. The health claim should represent a product that's intended for people over the age of 2. So they don't allow health claims to be on things like infant formulas. A lot of times you'll see the words may or might to describe any kind of relationship between that food product and a particular disease. And so when we go back and look at these two examples, and you can kind of look at some other examples, you see the little heart logo, it says it may reduce your risk of heart disease, right? There's no direct correlation to reduction of heart disease, although there have been studies that suggest, diets that have lots of fiber and legumes and things, beans, may reduce the risk of heart disease. But again, it uses the word may. The yogurt here didn't really use that terminology may or might, but it said it helps naturally regulate. It doesn't guarantee that it's going to, regulate your digestive system. So it does, kind of imply that there is some health benefit there, but no guarantee. Along with that, and it doesn't quantify the degree of risk reduction. It doesn't say that by eating the product, you're going to, have you're 100% sure that you're going to reduce your risk by this amount. It just kind of leaves that a little vague there, of course. And it indicates, sometimes they'll indicate that there really are multiple factors that go into a particular disease. There's not just one thing that may lead to a particular disorder. And so, this kind of comes close to that as an example. This says a diet including beans may reduce your risk of heart disease and certain cancers, although there's many other factors that may play into cardiovascular disease and cancer. So take a look at, go to your pantry, go to your food area, and kind of look at and see what kind of health claims that you find, and see if they do follow these guidelines. All right, the last little section here, we'll look at organic foods. And so sometimes we see this word applied in different ways. By definition here, an organic food is produced without the use of antibiotics, without the use of any kind of hormones, synthetic fertilizers, most synthetic pesticides, and we'll mention that in a minute, any kind of without the use of any kind of genetic manipulation improvement, like a GMO, genetically modified organism, and without the use of radiation. If you think of organic, sometimes you may think of, if you've had some chemistry, you may think of chemistry using the word organic. That's not really what we're talking about here in nutrition. In chemistry, we're talking about the chemistry associated with carbon. But we're looking here at as it applies to our food and to our nutrition. There are, again, some guidelines to find out what is organic as far as farming goes, agricultural goes, and what is just regular or conventional, non-organic. And so if it is organic, there are strict guidelines that there cannot be any synthetic fertilizers. And so if it's conventional, there's very few restrictions on what kind of fertilizer that can be used. For organic farming, most synthetic types of pesticides are not allowed. There are a few that are approved for organic farming. And these are usually those that are a little safer on the environment and safer, in the for the actual crop. Conventional, any government approved pesticides can be used per labeling instructions, and they still have to be government approved pesticides. There are some pesticides that over the years, for whatever reason, they have been banned for use. GMOs are not allowed, genetically modified organisms, for organic. If it's marked organic, then it should not contain any GMOs. And then conventional, of course, would allow that. And then for organic, no growth hormones or antibiotics type chemicals could be used. And then for the conventional, there are hormone and antibiotic that are allowed, but they have to be government approved there. And so if you're interested in this, what kind of constitutes organic as based on agriculture anyway, you can look at table 3:10 in the chapter. Now, there are some categories that you'll find in the grocery store. And so start looking for these if you're interested in organic labels and kind of what they mean. Sometimes you see it's a 100% organic. And so that means all of the ingredients in that particular food item has to be certified that they are organic. If it has 100%. If it doesn't say 100%, if it just says organic, then by USDA's definition, then at least 95%, which is still a very high percentage, at least 95% of the ingredients have to be certified as organic. So roughly 5% may not be organic. Okay. If it says made with organic, then their criteria is 70 to 95% are certified organic ingredients. So there's a little legality there to how they label certain things based on the USDA's guidelines there. But start looking at some of the labels, of course, and look for organic. Usually you'll find, maybe not always, but usually you'll find that organic because of these strict criteria that they have to follow. A lot of times that is the expense is passed on to the consumer. And so in general, you'll find that the organic labeled foods are a little more expensive. And so that may, kind of put some strains there on our budget. So take a look at these, look for these labels, look for health claims, look for the nutrient labels, and start seeing what we can learn about the foods that we eat based on the labels. All right, thanks, guys.